It's story time with Mr. Burnett. Story time with Mr. Burnett. It's bound to be something that you won't forget too soon.
One thing I love about my job is the chance to read a lot of different books that I might not normally read. I'm always interested in what you like and what you don't like, so I'm going to ask you about this one, but it's different. Different sort of book today called Brother Hugo and the Bear. And this book is written by Katie Beebe, illustrated by S.D. Schindler. It befell that on the first day of Lent, Brother Hugo could not return his library book. "I shall have to inform the abbot of this, Brother Hugo," said the librarian. The abbot was most displeased. "Our house now lacks the comforting letters of St. Augustine, Brother Hugo. How did this happen?" "Father Abbot," said Brother Hugo, "truly the words of St. Augustine are as sweet as honeycomb to me, but I am afraid they were much the sweeter to the bear." "Bear, Brother Hugo?" "Yes, Father." "Pray tell, Brother Hugo," said the abbot, "how did a bear find our letters of St. Augustine?" "They seemed to agree with him." The abbot shook his head. "Books in bears' stomachs do monks no good. You must make up for what you have lost. Fetch a copy of St. Augustine from our brothers at the Grand Chartreuse, and write it out word for word and line for line, and then return the book thither. Do all this within the season of Lent, and you will have made right good penance for the loss. And, Brother Hugo," added the abbot, "do not misplace this copy as well." So Brother Hugo set forth for the monastery of the Grand Chartreuse. He sorely sighed and sorrowed in his heart, for he knew that once a bear has a taste of letters, his love of books grows much the more. Verily, as Brother Hugo toiled up the path, he heard a great snuffling in the woods, and so he walked the faster. Crossing the river, Brother Hugo thought he heard lips smacking full close behind him. Then it must be said that he walked very quickly indeed. When Brother Hugo was in sight of the Grand Chartreuse, there came such grumblings and growlings in his ear that he sped full mightily through the fields and orchards and gardens and buildings, and through the gate and across the courtyard and into the cloister. And he did not cease until he found the great prior of the Grand Chartreuse. "Bless me," said the prior, "how came you to be so eager to visit us, Brother Hugo?" When Brother Hugo revealed the cause of his haste, the prior sighed. "Of course you may borrow our copy of St. Augustine's letters. Just remember that books are food for the souls of men, not for the stomachs of bears." Brother Hugo's relief did not last long, however. He could well hear what waited for him outside the gates. Look right there. Yet, after 20 Hail Marys, Brother Hugo thought to himself that the snuffling sounded very much like snoring, and so, by tiptoe and the light of the moon, he crept back to his own abbey. But all was not well. The Chartreuse manuscript felt as large in his hands as a giant stone on his heart. How was he to make another all by himself? Take comfort, said Brother Aelred. Friends meet every misfortune joyfully and help to bear each other's burdens. And truly, Brother Hugo found this to be so. Brother Caedmon gave him a fluffy sheepskin. Brother Bartholomew helped him stretch it on a frame and scrape it smooth with a sharp knife. When it was dry, they cut the skin into rectangles and folded them in half. Brother Hildebert helped him gather the parchment sheets and draw straight lines across them so that his writing would not wander. Brother Martin gave him a goose feather to use as a pen. Brother Eadmer crushed up nut galls, and Brother Hugo soaked them in rainwater for 3 days. Now, said Brother Eadmer, add green vitriol and a dash of gum, and voila, ink. Don't forget the red, the blue, and the gold, said Brother Anselm. Brother Jerome offered him a desk to write at and a penknife to scrape off mistakes. Thereafter, each day during Lent, Brother Hugo sat in the scriptorium writing out the book letter by letter, line by line. His back ached with many a pain. The light was poor. His fingers froze. Yet all these complaints he would have been full easy to endure if it had not been for the snuffling. Brother Hugo, the other monks cried, what can be the meaning of that noise? It is like the rumbling of a great stomach or the whooshing of a fierce wind. Brother Hugo knew right well the cause, and so he formed the letters all the faster, lest his delay the bear might grow hungrier. One day, Brother Hugo painted the last stroke of the last curlicue of the last picture on the last page of the book. Brother Ralph gave him a needle to sew all the gathered pages into place. Brother Hugo bound it all together between 2 wooden boards covered in leather, with 2 clasps to keep it shut. It was finished. Well done, Brother Hugo, said the abbot. The Grand Chartreuse will be most glad to have their book returned unto them. Don't forget these, whispered Brother Felix. We all added something. Thus, Brother Hugo set out once more for the monastery of the Grand Chartreuse, this time with a full, heavy sack. As Brother Hugo toiled up the path, he heard the snuffling that he right well expected. Shaking and quaking, he reached into his sack and brought forth a poem written by Brother Felix on a leaf of parchment. He tossed it to the bear and went quickly down the path. Yet, even as he crossed the river, the bear was no further from him than when he began, but rather closer. Brother Hugo pulled out another leaf, a sermon by Brother Ambrose, and threw it behind him. But he heard such smackings and munchings that he sped all the more, dropping poems and sermons and the moral tales as he went. As fast as the monk ran, the bear, who was right glad and pleased with the brother's work, shambled the faster, and Brother Hugo's sack grew lighter all the while. Truly, then did he begin to hasten. Faster and faster, monk and bear raced through the Grand Chartreuse's fields and orchards and gardens and buildings until, at the very doors of the great gate, Brother Hugo stopped. He pulled the last item out of his sack, the Grand Chartreuse's copy of the Letters of St. Augustine, and with it he smote a great smiting upon the snout of the bear. Whack! But the bear, sniffing the fine parchment and ink, gave a great smile, as bears are wont to do, and gulped down the choice morsel every bit. Then, with a full stomach, the bear laid himself at Brother Hugo's feet and slept. Timidly, the brothers of the Grand Chartreuse approached. They marveled at the sight of the monk and his new friend. "We are most right glad to see you, Brother Hugo," they whispered. "Your library book is due today." But the bear ate it. So, several points I would like to make. One, you people probably can relate to this. Some of you come and tell me that your library book was eaten by a dog or you have to buy a new one. Imagine in those days they couldn't just buy another book, they had to write it and actually draw it. That's how books were written in the Middle Ages. Here's a historical note from the author. In the Middle Ages, monks, like Brother Hugo, lived together in large buildings called monasteries so that they could pray, work, and serve God. One way of serving God was to pass on wisdom by making copies of books. It took many long months to make a book because each letter of each word of each page of each book was written out by hand. This is why books are called manuscripts. The Latin manus means hand, and scriptum is Latin for written. So these are handwritten books. It's one reason they're so valuable today. The few that exist are very valuable and kept in museums and things like that. Because these words were so important to them, the monks used brightly colored ink and paint and even gold to make the manuscripts as beautiful as possible. The gold in the manuscripts would catch the light as readers turned the pages. We call these works illuminated manuscripts today, after the Latin word for giving light, illuminare. In the 12th century, in what is now modern France, two communities of monks were particularly famous for their learning and books: the Benedictine monastery of Cluny and the Cistercian priory of La Grande Chartreuse. They formed great libraries and wrote to each other often, discussing ideas and exchanging books. Once, Peter, who was the head of La Grande Chartreuse, asked for a loan. He wanted to replace a manuscript that had been lost by brothers who had gone to a remote location to pray. Apparently, the perils of the soul were not the only dangers there. Peter wrote, "And send to us, if you please, the great volume of the letters by the Holy Father St. Augustine, which contains his letters to St. Jerome and St. Jerome's to him, for it happens that the greater part of our volume was eaten by a bear." So this is apparently inspired by what they believe to be a true story. Some monks had their St. Augustine letters eaten by a bear. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know. Like I said, different kind of book. There's a lot of historical fact in there, real information in there, but I hope you liked it. Thanks for joining me.